What's up, guys? This is the It Ain't Easy podcast. I'm your host, Dom Sharanson. Let's get it. And today, really excited, we have Andrew Sabarre on the podcast. He is the Chief Clinical Officer at Myo Detox and has many other ventures on the go at all times. Andrew, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, really excited for you to just come on here and share some bars with us, spit some wisdom. I think we know a little bit about what you do, but we don't know too much about who you are. So if you could start us at the young Andrew, where'd you grow up? What elementary school did you go to?
Wow. Oh, man, we're going back. I grew up in Burnaby.
Cool.
British Columbia. So went to Morley Elementary.
Okay.
Which was the French immersion school that my parents wanted me to go to. My parents are immigrants from the Philippines, and they had no idea what French immersion was, but they were like, I heard it's good, so we're going to put you in that.
Awesome.
Yeah, so Morley Elementary. Shout out to the Morley Mustangs.
Yeah, Morley Mustangs. Is that North Burnaby?
No, it was South Burnaby.
Cool.
Yeah.
And what about high school after that?
Went to Moscrop
Yep.
on, kind of like central Burnaby there. And then
That's just off like Willingdon, right?
Yeah, you're right. And it only went to grade 10. So for my senior years, 11 and 12, I went to Burnaby Central.
Cool.
Yeah.
And just your relationship with like sports and fitness at a young age. Were you playing any?
Yeah, I mean, I love playing sports, and always had like a natural inclination to play and practice. Love practicing. So I played soccer. Was in cross country, running. Played basketball on the basketball team and volleyball when I was like a young kid. But funny enough, my parents were so concerned about me over indulging in sport that they never really supported me going into sports fully, despite like I'm nowhere near the athlete that you are, Dom, but I did get voted
Retired.
Athlete of the year in grade 7. So I was but yeah, always loved sports, which is kind of this kind of like forbidden fruit that I was never really allowed to partake in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like an interesting follow-up question that came to mind is just like, obviously you're a physiotherapist now and movement and recovery is a big part of your day-to-day. Was it ever like a thought when you're a kid, elementary or high school, to like stretch or to like kind of mobilize?
Oh, not at all. Not at all. I mean, I had a severe ankle sprain, quite substantial ankle sprain when I was young playing basketball, and it wasn't even on the radar for me to go to see the physiotherapist. So I never saw a physio.
Yeah.
Ever. Until I got into the physio program.
And so everything's kind of just building on that foot. You got one different size than the other, or what was going on?
Yeah, I mean, that foot has had so many ankle sprains. The ligaments are pretty much gone, and the other side, as a result, suffered as well. And so, yeah, had injuries, but it wasn't something that was top of mind to like go and recover, go and get help, and rehab. So.
Yeah. And was that the direction you wanted to go, like immediately out of high school? You thought, I had heavy involvement in sports and sort of fitness at a young age. I want to pursue this like long term.
Yeah, I mean, I love sports. Again, played basketball in high school and was just obsessed with everything sports. Obsessed with the '90s Bulls, and my younger brother, ended up breaking his leg and had to go to see a physiotherapist. And my mom came home one day with the entry requirements for physio, brought it home and put it on the fridge. And so I was in grade 10, grade 11, and she said, this might be a really good,
Cool.
job for you.
Yeah.
So ever since then, I was like, oh, maybe I should do that, because I always wanted to be in healthcare, and I always loved sports. So I thought it was like a good coalescence of the two worlds.
Shout out to mom.
Yeah,
That's a good move.
a little bit of that parental pressure, to to find a nice stable job in physiotherapy. But funny enough, I got into the program not ever having experienced physio
Okay.
at all, which was really strange.
That's an interesting perspective.
It is. It is. I'm assuming you've been to physio before.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you had way more knowledge than I did before I got into the program.
Okay. Yeah. No, that's really interesting. You said you were hooping after grade 10. You leave in Moss Crop. Where'd you end up?
Burnaby Central.
Burnaby Central.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. But at that time, because it was so competitive to get into school and to get into UBC, I was so afraid that I wouldn't be able to concentrate. So I actually quit playing basketball.
Yeah.
To pursue my studies a little bit more focused. But of course, as high school does, you get distracted. And my brother was able to play basketball all the way through because he was much more disciplined, and he also still got into university. So I think it obviously can be done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It takes a little bit more time, and so many other things going on at the high school level. Sometimes you just want to enjoy that time. Moving into like the college level, you said your mom came home with those requirements to get into physio. You needed this. Well, first of all, what year did you kind of graduate, and at what time, or what was the timeline to get like your physiotherapy degree? Like, what courses did you need to take?
It's really funny you say that, because I remember I was in high school. I went to the counselor at the time because I said I really wanted to know how well I had to perform academically to be able to get into the physiotherapy program. And because of what I was into at the time, I was a bit of a goofball. He actually said, when he heard that I wanted to get into physiotherapy, he said, "Good luck." And I was like, "Oh, okay, yeah. I see you. All right." And when I graduated high school in 1999, the physiotherapy program was a bachelor's degree, and you could apply after 1 year prerequisite. So you'd go to UBC or go to university, get your first year prerequisites, and you could apply. But as a result, everyone from their first year, second year, third year, fourth year would apply. So the applicant pool was actually very, very competitive, because you didn't have a chance. And in my case, when I got in after 1 year prerequisites. You didn't really have a chance to kind of improve your GPA.
Right.
Your first year, you get into university, everybody's kind of excited. It's a new world. You want to party. You want to be social.
Oh, yes.
And so most university students in their first year don't do that well academically. So you kind of have to fluff it up after, your third, fourth year courses, and, you've learned how to study, how to play the game a little bit. But it was a really competitive program to get into. And it was a bachelor's program, so a lot of my classmates already had bachelor's degrees.
Yeah.
Wow. I was the youngest person in the program when I got in. I was a baby.
That's really cool, but
Yeah.
super scary. You're walking into this space and it's highly competitive, needed the marks, and then now I need to sustain this for, is it a 3-year program?
It was a 3-year program at the time. Once you got into the program, it wasn't as, dog eat dog in terms of the competitiveness. I think people genuinely wanted to see each other succeed, which was nice. But getting into the program was definitely a bit more competitive. And it was really funny because when I got in and I saw all my classmates, they were so much more mature. They had seen the world. A lot of them, I was still living at home. They lived on campus.
Yeah.
I was like, oh boy, what have I got myself into? Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting, like, looking back on it. Would you say that system is better or worse compared to what we have now, which is like, 4 years of a bachelor degree, science, kinesiology, and then the opportunity to go into the physio?
You know what? I think there's pluses and minuses, pros and cons to both sides. I think like close to 30% of my classmates ended up going into medicine.
Okay.
After graduating from physiotherapy. So at the time, the program was quite small.
Yeah.
So it wasn't good for the physiotherapy profession because, you commit to producing this many physiotherapists, and then a good chunk of them end up deciding to go and move on. And, I think that if you graduate with your bachelor's degree and you decide to apply for a master's program, I think there's a higher level of commitment to that path.
Okay.
To continue to pursue that career. And I also think that you definitely get a certain, like, you get more maturity. The graduates that are coming out now, I think just they have a better head on their shoulders to work with patients, and the case, the circumstances, the clinical circumstances that they find themselves in. I think they're better prepared for it, just from an emotional maturity standpoint.
Yeah, that's interesting. The emotional maturity, just essentially people are older, and so they have better bedside manner, that side of thing, or table manner, that side of thing.
Yeah, I think one of the big things with healthcare is that you have to have empathy, and you have to be able to look at things outside of your own perspective and try to look at it from the perspective of the patient, to really give good client-centered care. Mm-hmm. And I think that's something that kind of evolves and grows as you mature, and as a young person, it's very easy to be self-centered.
Yep. So when you get into this program, you have the 3 years to complete. What was your mind state, or like where was your head at in terms of what you're going to do after this program finished?
I always wanted to work in private practice. I always wanted to work with athletes, and I was definitely, I had a chip on my shoulder. I really wanted to be good at what I did. Because I felt I was young and inexperienced, I always felt like I needed to prove something. So I had a lot of determination to go out and do all the postgraduate studies that I needed to do to kind of, set myself ahead and be a bit more of a advanced therapist. Mm-hmm. So I knew as soon as I graduated, I would be right back into the books, and those in the books, start studying, get my designations, get some experience, and try to get some experience working with some teams and some athletes.
Mm-hmm. So would you say, like, as a degree program, like the physiotherapy gives you like the foundation, and then you need to take a bunch more, I guess, like accreditation to, elevate your skills, provide new movement patterns? Like what does that look like, these postgraduate certifications?
Yeah, I mean, there's a pretty extensive program for like orthopedics that you can take, which is like learning, advanced musculoskeletal therapy. So, how all the different tissues and the joints, how they all kind of work, and advanced diagnosis, and rehabbing, those between like very common injuries to more complex injuries. Mm-hmm. That program usually takes between 4 to 5 years if you're really going for it to kind of finish that designation. Yeah. There's now a master's program at Western that offers, I think, Western as well as McMaster's. They offer a program that can help you get that designation as well. At the end of the day, it's actually just the process. It's like, the amount of hours that you put in studying, and the practical study that you have to do as well. That's what makes you, I think, a very high level therapist, as opposed to just kind of, reading the books and just being out there for time. It's more just like, how much time are you honing your craft and spending your time practicing critical thinking, really learning how to do the mental gymnastics around how to diagnose and treatment plan, etc. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of the way in my mind, I feel like you graduate from school, you kind of feel like you're just ready to go. Yeah. But I think one of the things that this is kind of across the board and like all professions is like having that student mindset or a learning mindset where you're just always continuing to learn. It's kind of part of the job as a physiotherapist, but this really puts it into practice.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really interesting, like just an outside perspective as an athlete. I've worked with some athletic therapists and physiotherapists, and I think a big differentiator between like the ones with years of experience and like the ones fresh out of school is like this like confidence about them that like this is for sure what's happening to your leg, and these are the prescribed exercises to fix this. And then like the older physio will look at you and say, hey, well, this might not be the driving force of your injury. Let's look at this, this, and this, kind of taking a step back. I guess it's more upstream. And that comes with those certifications and like just being in your books, the hours, the experience.
Experience is huge. And I mean, I've met a lot of really good therapists that don't have the certifications and whatnot, right? I think it's never a guarantee, but I think it's a good watermark. It's a good, it's a good foundation. And, experience does a lot. Like you said, the confidence, like when I first graduated, man, I was shaking, just like in my boots. Just, I remember being so nervous dealing with my first patients that, people that are in like a lot of pain and they're trusting me. I was 22 at the time when I graduated from school. Like, man, people would be asking me all the time, how old are you? And I would lie. I would tell them I was older.
That's funny.
Yeah.
It's a lot of responsibility, though.
It is. And I wanted them to trust me. And if I think, I have a 22-year-old that's taking care of my back and I'm in so much pain I can't move.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough.
Totally. So what was sort of the first move after school?
I got a job at a clinic in Port Coquitlam.
Cool.
And it was a really good, like, very manual therapy based clinic. And it was a great place to start. I saw the kind of patients that would allow me to practice and hone my skills as I was going out and getting more education. And
which is what, people that are more active?
It was a good mix of people that were active, people that were, that had maybe sustained a serious injury, and some people that had gone into car accidents and people that had sustained work injuries. So you kind of want to
well-rounded.
Yeah, exactly. You just kind of want that wide palette of clients so that it better prepares you for as you specialize kind of further down the road.
Cool.
So
nice. And I've seen some work on like Core X. Is that one of those systems, sort of like that postgraduate? I just want to expand my knowledge. What is Core X?
It's a good question. So Core X is actually a system that was created by Alex McKechnie, who I was really lucky enough to have as one of my mentors, and he just created that system to treat athletes with, at first it was with groin pain and low back pain, and it just became like a system of like movement retraining that he's kind of expanded and has really just made quite well renowned in sports rehab. So counting my blessings that I was able to work with him. But it wasn't a course or anything like that, right? Yeah. It was I happened to work at a clinic in North Vancouver that he was working out of. Yeah. And I asked him one day, I'd heard of him, I'd heard of the work that he was doing, had no idea who he was or what he looked like. But I remember working one day, seeing him, and he was working with an athlete, and I asked one of the therapists at the clinic, I was like, who is that? I was like, it's Alex McKechnie. I was like, oh, it's the Alex McKechnie, the one that had worked with Shaq and was working with the Lakers and worked with the Grizzlies, and he was quite well known locally at the time. I mean, obviously well known in the industry at the time, but he was an urban legend because he was no longer working in Vancouver. He was working with the Lakers. Yeah, cool. So yeah, I just asked him, hey, can I hang out, watch? And he's like, sure. And after the day was over, I was like, can I do it again tomorrow? And again and again and again. And it just turned into a just great relationship of mentorship. Awesome.
Yeah. So, I see like some synergy there, and like he's created this movement system, and I think that kind of aligns with what you guys do at MyoDetox. When I go for treatment, there seems to be a full package that is not just ultrasound, ice, stim, kinesiology exercises, go home. It's full body assessment. It's seeing how like one joint is connected to the other. Could you explain sort of like what those principles are and kind of what load and launch is, those sort of things?
Yeah, I think that one of our big principles is that you want to find the root cause of the problem, and the body works as a unit, and it's not just isolated specific parts of the body that are dysfunctional. There's a lot of things that contribute or could be actually the cause of your symptoms, even though you may be feeling those symptoms somewhere else. So in more traditional therapy, sometimes you'll find that people will over index on the area of pain it won't actually look further out or look elsewhere. So we train our therapists to have a bit of a broader perspective. You want to take into consideration what's happening locally, but you want to look a little bit more globally at what else is happening that is probably contributing or could be the primary contributor to what people are feeling. So that's kind of one part of the approach. The other part of the approach is with exercise. You kind of refer to load and launch. Load and launch is just a pattern of exercises that we kind of coined that just really help with more global movement and trying to retrain movement patterns. In the same vein as some of the stuff that we were doing with Core X. So
just that we lose through like sedentary behavior.
Sedentary behavior
Injury.
Or compensation, right?
Gotcha.
You could be hurt, and so humans are best at adapting. So it's like, oh, I sprained my ankle. You're not just gonna stop moving. You're just gonna start limping.
Yeah.
Right. And we have different ways of limping in every activity, and we could call it limping, but maybe you hurt your shoulder, and instead of you not brushing your hair, you're just going to brush your hair a different way. It's like your shoulder's now limping, right? And so to untrain or downtrain a limp that you've developed over time, that takes a lot of work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. Interesting. So we're on the topic of like movement. If you had 2 minutes to warm up before sort of like HIIT style body weight exercise, what would you do?
If I had 2 minutes, I think you probably want to focus on dynamic, like a dynamic style warm up. That you would warm up I think like the extremities. So you want to make sure that you've got good movement. You've warmed up some movement in the hips, in like the flexion extension kind of pattern, some rotation. So like seeing your hips kind of rotate, open up. You want to warm up your shoulders. Make sure again that you're kind of starting to get to the ranges of motion that you will be experiencing in that workout. So if you're going to be doing a lot of overhead work, you make sure that you've warmed up your shoulders overhead. And then I'm a big proponent of thoracic mobility and rotation, making sure that you're getting good mobility there. It's an area that a lot of people don't think about because it's not common, especially in HIIT workouts. Like rotational movements in HIIT workouts are kind of few and far between.
I'm glad you mentioned that, and like I'm laughing because that's what I always forget too, is like T-spine rotation, like things like that, man.
Yeah. A lot of people think that the rotation comes from the hips, right? Like when you twist, and there is a certain component of it that comes from there, but a lot of rotation is supposed to come from your T-spine. That's a primary area of rotation, but for a lot of us, we get really stiff in that area. If you're sitting down all day, you do a lot of upper body, like, strengthening, that area gets stiff and you lose rotation there. So you start to compensate, finding rotation in different places. And that's kind of what can lead to a bit more stress in those areas that weren't necessarily built for that type of stress.
Right.
Yeah. And then lastly, I always would incorporate some sort of core activation, right?
Okay.
And core activation that is in the movements. So if I'm doing a lot of squats, or if I'm going to do a squat, squat type movements in the HIIT workout, I would make sure that I've warmed up my core in the context of doing a squat, as opposed to doing like just like a static plank or crunches or whatnot, because there's a huge piece called transferability, right? And whatever it is that we warm up or practice, you want it to transfer to the thing that we're doing.
Yes.
Right. So you want to make it as close to the activity as possible.
Cool. Yeah, it's good. Like ideally you have more than 2 minutes to warm up, but that sounds like you're covering all your necessary spots, right? I'm definitely going to try that. Looking at, you said you went from, was it Port Coquitlam, then you were in Lynn Valley. Was Pivotal after that?
Yeah, so Pivotal was after my stint in Lynn Valley. In 2012, opened up a clinic and wanted to just focus on delivering a bit more, focused one-on-one care. and wanted to try my crack at entrepreneurialism.
Yeah.
You know, and so opened that clinic up with my business partner Nathan Vanderkoop. And
shout out to Nathan.
Shout out to Nathan. Been a colleague of mine since 2007, so we've been in the trenches together. And that was a rude awakening to the world of owning a business.
Yeah.
But also just probably one of the most fulfilling adventures that I went and took. So,
yeah. What was one of the highest moments, biggest moments for you guys? And what was one of the most frustrating things in that startup process?
You know, one of the things I would say we experienced a high pretty quickly in that we were busy out the gates.
Cool.
And that was nice because you're always nervous. You always think, do people even care enough about about the work that I'm doing that they would come follow, or are we out there enough? Are we well known enough that we could generate referrals and generate a business? And so in our first month, we said we weren't going to hire. I talked to a buddy of mine. He said, you don't need front desk. You don't need a receptionist for at least a year. At this time, online bookings were starting to become a thing.
Yeah.
And so we were like, yeah, you know what? We don't need a receptionist. That's fine. And within 2 weeks, the phone was ringing off the hook, and I was getting like anxiety because I was treating people, and I knew that those were people trying to book in. And we had to make the decision within 3 weeks to hire a receptionist because the business was getting busy. And so that was a real cool win early on. That was like, man, that's actually cool, because we knew that at that point, okay, wheels are in motion, we got some momentum.
Yeah.
The biggest low, there's so many ups and downs in business. One of the biggest lows would have been when we were deciding to actually open up another clinic. And at the time, we were actually looking to do a rebrand. And I was really excited because we had done some really cool work with with a designer here locally who was doing some great work. His name's Chris Williams. He's done some really cool work, and we were just completely rebranding the Pivotal. It was called Pivotal Health, and we were just gonna call it Pivotal, and had some really sick designs that he'd come up with, and we decided not to do it, and that kind of sucked at first when we thought about it, but it was because we were saying yes to a different opportunity. Yeah, and that opportunity was Myo Detox.
Yeah. I was about to say. So before you came on as like chief clinical officer, Myo Detox was up and running. Vinny, I'm somewhat familiar with. Could you speak on what the brand was kind of before your partnership?
Oh yeah, I mean, we had caught wind of Myo Detox well before we joined. Probably early days, like 2015 maybe.
Yep.
2015, 2016. They had a website that was so different visually than any other physiotherapy clinic. It was definitely more Equinox vibe. It was like it's just so different. The physical therapy space and healthcare in general can be fairly stale, right? And so you see people in the lab coats, you see people like, patients in, patients look like they're patients, like they're injured. They're like, they don't, it's not as aspirational as it could be.
Yeah.
Right. And then Myo came out with this brand that was somewhat polarizing, to be honest.
Yeah.
The brand it caught your eye, and as a consumer, it definitely would be like, this is a different feel and vibe. They had the patients had tattoos.
Yeah.
Like that was different. Healthcare was about collared shirts and everything's prim and proper, and the patients here had like tattoos. The therapists would be showing their tattoos, and I don't have any tattoos, so it's not like I could relate, but it was nice to see they were trying to break barriers.
Yeah, almost more of like a gym and a studio vibe than like traditional,
Absolutely, and so we were like, wow, like they're doing something different, and it's definitely catching eyes. So they did a meetup here. Vin and Scott, actually, is really funny. They did a meetup, and my friend said, "Hey, Drew, these My Detox guys are coming into town. You should come with me and let's check it out." And at the time, Pivotal was doing really well, and we were more like on the spectrum of traditional therapy for sure, but we were trying to break barriers ourselves. We wanted to really scale out good therapy and make it more available to just the average person, and to the just to make it relevant, right? So that it was more like a part of people's lifestyle as opposed to just when you're seriously injured.
Yeah.
When we came to the meetup, they were like, these guys were wearing like designer clothes, like they were very fashion forward, Scott and Vin, and the meetup I thought it was gonna be small. There was a ton of people.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, they really caught a lot of people's attention.
Yeah.
So the brand was making big moves at that point, and by the time I'd come on, Mayo had already opened up 4 clinics in Toronto, and they had merged with Physio Room here in Vancouver.
Yeah, so they were Toronto first, right?
They were Toronto first. Yeah. So it was just unseen in the space, and to be honest, even to this day, it's still like I don't think anybody's really doing what we're doing right now. Yeah.
No, that's awesome. And so, as like clinical director, is there some sort of like curriculum that you put your employees through, and is that kind of your role there?
Yeah, we definitely have a pretty extensive training and development program for our therapists. It's very different from, I think, what's out there. In our industry, we train our therapists in kind of our approach. We train our therapists on like soft skills, like things like active listening and how to have conversations with people, how to build trust with people. And then we train them in our manual therapy systems and our exercise systems. So it's standardized across the board, across a company in all regions. And we have a delivery system. We have a network of senior therapists that are in specific roles for training that deliver the training of these therapists.
Cool.
Yeah. And then on top of that, after they've been trained, there's a mentorship program within Miles, so that the therapists continue to develop and continue to grow, and again, that's structured so that our therapists, it's a lot harder to get stay stagnant or to become stagnant in our system.
Cool. Is there plan for like just continued expansion? Like, how many locations do you guys have at this point?
So we have 13 locations so far across Vancouver, Toronto, and LA. Cool. And yeah, there is a heavy emphasis on expansion. We spent a good chunk of time during COVID. We opened a couple of clinics during COVID, but that after we opened them and made sure that things were up and running, we kind of held back for a little bit of time to get our bearings and to create more infrastructure. And we've recently just kind of pressed the button on expansion, and so we're doing a lot of work right now to expand in those current regions.
Okay.
And then we're even looking into expanding into other regions of Canada.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Excited for that. Congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you.
Just in terms of like, you had your business that was like super successful, pivotal, and then that sort of transition to now working with, multiple studios, taking on a role that is kind of designing, the operations for these different employees. Is there any part of like what you were doing before that you kind of miss?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I don't treat as many patients as I used to.
Yeah.
I still treat, but it's way, way less. I do a lot of teaching now, which I love. I love teaching and developing the therapists. And I do a lot of coaching of our field team leaders, and I love doing that. But there's something about being on the ground, just working with patients day to day, seeing their day to day progress or week to week progress, and then also I loved going out to the community and making connections in the
Yeah.
community, kind of like preaching the word of at the time pivotal, or just preaching the word of physiotherapy to people, just to help people in need and create those kind of collisions
Yeah.
out in the community. So I really love doing that, and I don't get to do that as much now. So
Yeah.
I travel a lot.
Busy, cool.
Yeah.
Are you still hooping?
Oh man, I wish I could say yes.
Yeah.
I wish I could say yes. I have intentions to start shooting around again. But we played actually all up until the pandemic. I was playing on a regular run, at least a couple times a week in the morning at Creekside.
Yeah.
And the day that COVID shut everything down, I remember playing, thinking, man, should I be playing right now?
Yeah.
There's a lot of this COVID thing going around.
Totally.
And so I haven't really picked it back up since.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and you definitely have to. You're managing so many different people and clients that there's a level of respect you have to have for that. So I have sympathy, right? But hopefully you're back out there shortly.
Soon
at least
enough.
getting some shots up.
I need to.
Yeah.
I'm desperate to. I'm desperate. My son's playing a lot of basketball,
Cool.
and it's funny because he's starting to get confident and wants to challenge his old man. So
Awesome.
I gotta dust off the basketball shoes and take some shots.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what other ways are you trying to stay fit right now? Like, what do you like to do for exercise? And
Well, the days of CrossFit have passed, and
Yeah.
I used to love that. That was like a passion of mine for a while, and so now I try to still lift weights, and I've recently really taken up running.
Cool.
So, which I never thought I would really enjoy it. I did my first half marathon in 2013. The minute I did it, I was like, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. And I walked into the CrossFit gym in North Van, and I started that journey.
Okay.
But with all the travel we do, it's really hard to find any consistency. So running is kind of like the simplest thing.
Yeah, you just hop out there and you get to see some cool stuff.
Yeah. So running is kind of my main go, and then try to do some basic weights, compound movements, and throw in a little bit of Olympic lifting here and there, but nothing too fancy, nothing too crazy. I'm also getting older, so I got to be a little bit more careful about throwing big weights over my head and taking myself out.
Yeah.
So
maybe we could put that in there in terms as a follow-up question. This may come obvious to some, but like, what sort of training regime, you're talking about resistance weights, is like the hardest on the joints?
I think the thing that's hardest on the joints is probably, without getting too technical, I think it's whatever your joints haven't been subjected to. So, the hardest thing is the thing that you've never done.
I haven't thought of it like that.
Yeah. Right? So if you subject yourself to enough variability, then I think your body will be a lot more resilient to different stresses and higher stresses.
Yeah.
If you subject your body to the same stress all the time, then even the simplest stress, but it's just novel, could be the thing that really pushes you over the edge. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So, you have guys that could squat so much weight, right? And they could squat, 400, 500 pounds, but you get them to twist and lift a medicine ball, and maybe they just never twist.
Yeah.
And that could be it.
Huh.
Right? So that's
diversify.
Yeah. A little bit of variability is important, right?
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. What about if I was to step into your house, a little invasive? What would I find there that I wouldn't find at other people's?
Oh man. Yeah, I'm a quirky guy, so I think there's quite a few things that might be in the house that you know what it is actually, if what's actually weird is not so much that I have any like singular item that's like really quirky that you wouldn't find. It's just that you would notice how much of a creature of habit I am if you came to my house on a regular basis. I eat the same thing all the time.
Okay.
I drink coffee from the same cup. I eat the same treats, like almost every night.
Yeah.
Yeah, very much a creature habit. So it might be like, you might just notice that it's a little bit, it's not super clean. And
Yeah.
like, I mean, it's my wife keeps the house like pretty nice, but like there's like a bit of a OCD component to it.
Yeah.
For me.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Cool.
So.
Okay. The last one is just about movies. So, if you could live inside of any movie, which one would it be and why?
Oh man, that's a good question. There's kind of like, I think the best answer would be Ocean's 11 for me.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Haven't heard that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
That is a good one.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah. There's something about like being part of a heist
Yeah.
would be amazing, but on that level of like just smooth.
What do you think your
Cool.
operation would be?
Oh, I mean, I kind of feel I'd be more on like the George Clooney side, where you're kind of masterminding the whole thing and
Yep.
and coming up with all these different cons.
Yep.
Yeah. I don't think I'd be a specialist with like the explosives or anything like that. I'm more cerebral than
I like it.
than destructive. So,
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, so much knowledge here. I think so many people will be able to pull from your experience and just kind of your come up, even from elementary level to now. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me,
Yeah.
Dom. It was great. Appreciate it.
Till next time.
All right, man. Thank you.